So verse 87, Hatha Yoga Pradipika. The Bindu semen that is about to fall into the woman's vagina should be made to move upwards with practice. And if it falls, the semen and the woman's fluid should be conserved by drawing it up. The Bindu or semen is not supposed to be released, but if this occurs, then it must be drawn up through the generative organ by Vajroli. The flow of Bindu can be reversed at various stages, for example, through practices of Viprita Karini Mudra, Kechari Mudra, as has already been discussed. Vajroli is the last technique to be described. That Viprita Karini Mudra was like the 45-degree angle legs. Do you remember that, Sue? Like the shoulder stand variation with, and then the Kechari Mudra is the tongue mudra.
Right.
Vajroli is the last technique to be described. In the previous slokas, it has been stated that so long as Bindu falls into the sun, decay and death are the end result. As it is consumed by the fire during the lifespan, the sun represents Rajas and Manipura, but Rajas also refers to vaginal secretions. Therefore, if the Bindu falls into the Rajas, the practice of Vajroli has not been successful. When Bindu falls to Manipura, what is actually consumed by the fire are its sattvic nectarine qualities, which enlighten the body and bestow immortality. Below Manipura, the chakras are concerned with the instinctive animal functions and tamasic qualities. And if the Bindu is spilled here, it becomes a poison, causing suffering and death. Therefore, during the practice of Mathuna, a sattvic state of mind has to be maintained at all costs, even though the lower chakras are activated. The rajasic and tamasic tendencies of those centers are to be recognized and controlled. The Shiva Samhita states, the practice of Vajroli bestows deliverance even upon those who are bound by worldly attraction. It is therefore the duty of all yogis to ensure that it is practiced with due care. The wise should first absorb into their body with the ovarial fluid in the vagina by contracting the duct of their own organ, and therefore perform coitus without ejecting the seminal fluid. Should the latter tend to issue, it must be restrained by the means of yoni mudra, Vajroli. Next, the same seminal fluid should be diverted to the channel on the left, Ida, and the coitus stopped for a while. Therefore, in accordance with the instructions of the guru, they should, with a long intake of apana, extract with one triumphal effort the remaining ovarial fluid in the vagina. In this text, there is no mention of the preparatory stages of Vajroli using a tube and water. Comparison of all the texts give a clearer picture of Vajroli. First, Udayana, Nali, and Mula Bandha have to be perfected. Then Vajroli should be practiced by sitting on the buttocks, raising the legs, etc., as described in the Garanda Samhita. After this, it should be practiced by muscular contraction of the urethra and then with a tube or catheter. When all of these have been perfected, it is the guru who will indicate further practices. Therefore, the knower of yoga conquers death by preserving the Bindu semen. Release of the Bindu means death. Conservation of semen is life. This sloka demands detailed discussion. The word Bindu means point or nucleus. The nucleus of every cell is the same Bindu. It contains the chromosomes, which encode the entire memory and evolutionary potential of the species. Of course, it is not only loss of semen which causes death. Cell degeneration, death, and replacement is continually occurring at a certain rate in all the tissues of the body, except in the central nervous system where the neurons are not replaced. Semen and menses are specifically referred to because their rate of formation and turnover far overshadows the turnover rate of the other cells and therefore has the most metabolic significance. What is the connection between semen and immortality? It is twofold. In common life, union of these germ cells create another Bindu, another individual, and another universe. This is the glimpse of immortality through one's progeny. Progeny. Secondly, according to Swatmarama, its seminal release from the body can be quelled. A man has tapped within his own body that same primal source of life. Both medical science and modern psychology have dismissed the ancient belief in the value of retaining the semen as an old wives' tale. However, from the yogic experience, this myth contains more essential truth than all the medical and psychological tomes ever published. There have been experts who have nevertheless remained ignorant about the purpose of existence. The modern age is no exception. There may be intellectual giants, there may be compassionate and even heroic men, there may be dedicated humanists, but this is not enough if they have failed to grasp transcendental experience. Their endeavors and achievements remain within the realm of empirical consciousness and the lower mind. Why has Swatmarama made a claim that loss of semen is the cause of death? That the semen contains an enormous force in molecular or potential form. It can be compared to the potential contained within an atomic bomb. The seminal fluid discharged in a single emission contains an average of 400 million spermatozoa. Each of these minute sperm possesses enough energy to swim 3,000 times its own length. In relative terms, that is the same amount of energy used up by a 6-foot man swimming 1.5 miles. That is the amount proportionately of the body's vital energy packed into a single sperm cell expelled from the body in a single seminal emission. When the shedding and ejaculation of semen is habitual, frequent, and uncontrolled, that individual is being constantly drained of the quantum of highly potent living essence, which the body has no option but to continually replace using constant supply of metabolic energy. Where has this energy, which is lost in the semen, come from? From the nutritional viewpoint, it is derived from the new dietary nutrients broken down in digestion, assimilated into the blood, and constituted into the nucleic acids and the fatty protein structure of the spermatozoa. Metabolic energy is consumed every step of the way. Constant replacement of discharged semen demands that a diet rich in fats and proteins be consumed. This imposes a heavy working burden upon the digestive organs and glands, such as the liver and pancreas, as well as on the heart, circulatory, and eliminative systems. As a result, the cells and tissues of the bodily systems demand replacement more rapidly, and the higher overall cell turnover leads to greater expenditure of metabolic energy, accelerates the metabolic rate, and elevates the basal body temperature. According to gerontologists who investigate the aging and degenerative process, elevation and acceleration of these factors are the major cause of rapid physical degeneration and early death of the human body. According to Swatmarama, preservation of the semen in the body conserves energy and bestows upon the yogi a power and experience not known to a man accustomed to losing semen throughout his life. He declares that semen, which is withheld in the very nectar of immortality. How many men die prematurely with desires unfulfilled and dreams unaccomplished because vitality has deserted their body, clarity has escaped their mind, acuity has vanished from their senses, and exhaustion has overcome their will? Could it be that seminal retention sustains a greater conscious power in the body, mind, and will of a yogi? Does seminal retention create an indwelling fountain of joy, power, bliss, which enlightens the human brain? These are the questions which modern scientists will have to ask themselves. It is not sufficient to dismiss the claims and experiences of yogis as unscientific myths. The materialistic scientific vision of man as naught beyond blood, bone, bile, and fat is sustained by the uncontrolled loss of semen. Why control the semen? Certainly not for any moralistic reason. Note well that Swatmarama is not recommending celibacy, only the retention of semen. If a man can escape from the slavish compulsion to expel the semen, he can realize within himself the source of freedom, immortality, and bliss. The entire Hatha Yoga Pradipika sets out the method to preserve the body and mind. Let those who would realize the truth seek a guru and practice according to initiation and instructions. Verse 89. As long as the Bindu or semen is steady in the body, then where is fear of death? The yogi's body smells pleasant by conserving the Bindu or semen. Fear of death is one of the most fundamental motivating forces governing human personality and behavior. These have been termed as kleshas by sage Patanjali. Fear of death stems from identification of the self with the physical body. Release of semen strongly reinforces this identification. When a yogi can control the Bindu, preventing its release from the body, even in Mathuna, identification with the body ceases and consciousness is freed from physical identification. Then the fear of death dissolves. Even though a person may say that he does not fear death, nevertheless, his body reactions and responses betray that he is still governed by this fear. It remains a subconscious determinant of his behavior. To convince the conscious mind that I am fearless in the face of death is not difficult. It is only a psychological matter. How can we convince the deeper mind and overcome the psychological response of fear, which are subconsciously determined? For that, tantric and yogic sadhana are necessary, and a competent guru should be sought. The second segment of the sloka states that conservation of the Bindu alters the smell of the yogi's body. How can this occur? The cyclic phases of the reproductive process liberate chemicals from the body which have particular odors. These have been isolated by scientists and are known as pheromones. Normally, we are unaware of these odors unless they are potent, but they exert a subliminal influence upon the unconscious brain. Scientific investigations have revealed that the odor emitted from one woman's armpits at the onset of her menstruation triggers off a chain reaction in other women living in close proximity. It has also been found that the pheromones released from a man's armpit cause a psycho-emotional response to a woman depending on the stage of her menstrual cycle. With the release of reproductive secretions, new cells are produced and the odor cycle begins. However, if the semen is maintained in the body, the quality of pheromones changes. It is something like cultivating perfume. Premature cultivation does not give a pleasant smell, but once perfectly cultivated, it will give off a fragrant odor. Similarly, the body of a yogi emits a highly fragrant odor. Of course, as well as conservation of semen, other factors influencing body odor have to be taken into consideration. Pure and moderate diet, regular bathing, and keeping the clothes clean also influences body odor. But Swatmarma is talking of something beyond this. Verse 90. A man's semen can be controlled by the mind, and control of semen is life-giving. Therefore, his semen and mind should be controlled and conserved. Yogis have always claimed that autonomic body functions can be consciously controlled, but it takes time and effort. It is only recently that science is proving this true. The easiest method is to work with pranayama, as the rate and depth of the breath influences the physiological systems of the body, brainwave patterns and modes of thinking. Function of the reproductive organs can also be influenced and eventually controlled by yoga practices over a sustained period of time. The easiest functions to control are those concerned with the voluntary nervous system. For this, the system of asana has been developed. Release of reproductive secretion is not only a physiological process, the mind is also involved. Without mental involvement, the release cannot occur. The role of sensory pathways, Gyandriya, and the mental imagery in initiating sexual responses must be witnessed. Control of mind begins by becoming aware of the process. By isolating awareness, the mind remains unexcited in the midst of sensory perception. When the mind can be witnessed in this way, excitation of the motor responses, karmadriya, can be controlled, and semen can be withheld. Control of mind means control of the whole process. By the practice of Vajroli, one can learn to control the physical mechanism, but side by side with this, mental control must be developed. When the mind wanders into useless fantasy, energy is dissipated. When the mind is totally concentrated on a specific object, symbol, or point, pranic movements are channeled and the Bindu is maintained. In Hatha Yoga, the mind has to be kept on the aim of the practices in order to induce total one-pointedness. And I will pause there. Amanda, I don't know if you're there, but you gave a Dharma talk last Monday. No, it was last Wednesday in class, and you read us the transcript of Ethan Hawke's TED Talk. And I don't really know Ethan Hawke that well because I don't watch many TV or movies. And then I came home, and that Friday or Saturday, Eric was like, oh, there's this show on whatever channel. And he knows my taste in movies or what he could hook my attention on. He's like, maybe we try to watch this. And it's an Ethan Hawke show. Called The Good Yellow Bird or something, The Good Lord Bird. I don't know if you've seen this show, but
No, I haven't seen it.
I was like, maybe this is why she talked about Ethan Hawke, because he's in this new show.
Oh, I don't know. This TED Talk came up with him. That's what it was. It was from his TED Talk.
Yeah,
no, I'm like obsessed with Linklater, and Linklater and him would always sort of like collaborate on movies when I guess it was like the 90s and the early 2000s.
I don't even know who Link is. I just thought it was funny. Like all of a sudden Ethan Hawke came into my life. Like I went through all his movies, and I think the one movie I saw of his was Training Day. And Eric's like, you've watched this movie twice, and I could not remember it. It's coming back. I like can't remember, like that part of my brain just doesn't remember anything. He's like, you definitely saw that movie.
I want to see Creamer.
Oh, you want to see Kramer? He's sleeping. I'll show you him in a little bit. I'll wake him up.
Just wait till he wakes up, honey. Pam's talking. Try not to interrupt her. Waking Life is a good one. Waking Life is like our discussions.
But this movie, it's about, he plays a character called John something, and he's basically the guy that started the Civil War, they're saying. And he's this very religious man, and he's trying to end slavery, but it's like, I feel like I'm watching like a real life Bhagavad Gita. Like his character, like he just feels so strongly, and he's just constantly quoting verses from the Bible. But his character, I mean, he's just such a powerful actor. But it's based back like in the 1800s or whatever. And I constantly say, the whole point of the story is, I constantly say to Eric, I'm like, they must smell so bad because they're just constantly dirty, and like you never see them going and bathe. Like now, I think it's like a 7-episode show or something. I can only watch them very slowly, so I'm only on the 2nd episode. But every time I see them, I'm like, I can't even imagine what these people must smell like.
Yeah, I don't think it was good.
I was just thinking of that when they were reading, when we were just reading about body odor. But yeah.
What was Ethan Hawke's TED Talk about?
It was about like how the impetus for creativity isn't a luxury like most people think, but it's like going to be what saves us. It was a good talk. I could send you the transcript.
I love that talk. And actually I have this ring that I have not taken off my finger since it's like just like 1, 2, it's like a little 5-diamond thing that my college boyfriend, that I bought for myself from my college boyfriend, you know, like that type of thing. So it's been on my finger since like early 2000s. And it's called a personality ring, and inside it says creative. It's like transcribed. And so I always think about that. I do think being creative is like super important, and whatever that creative is for you.
Right.
Because I always used to consider myself like not an artist. Like I can't draw anything, but I love to color. I like to scrapbook. Like you find your own ways to be creative. You can be creative in writing or teaching a yoga class. Like creativity is how I totally agreed with what he was saying.
It's just like making something that aligns with what your soul craves to create.
Yes.
Like even the manager of the business, like if you're creating businesses, then you're creative. It's
Yeah.
And he was saying like the poet, he was quoting who was he quoting? He was quoting a poet, I think it was Ginsberg, and he was saying that he always plays the fool. And the idea is like in order to really be like purely creative, you have to play the fool. You can't have the expectation that you're making anything for people to like it, because people are fickle. And it's like just like this pure state of beingness is really like pure creativity, and that's going to be what saves humanity. It was a great talk. It was good.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear it. I mean, it's really true when I agree, there's so many different ways to be creative. You can be creative in the garden, in the kitchen. You can be creative when you're cleaning the toilet, But that whole thing, I'd love to hear the quote about not trying to please other people. That's one of the hardest things, and when I've been trying to paint and use watercolors and ink and that kind of thing. The hardest thing is to not give a toss about what other people are going to think, and to just say, oh, screw it, just do it, and it is so hard to do, because especially, and I think it's kind of built into us from the time when we're young, even innocuous, innocent praise, if a teacher says, oh, that's nice, and it's well meant, and it's meant to be encouraging, can be, it builds that into yourself where you care too much about what other people think, and to get to the real kernel of what you're trying to do, you can't. And it's really hard to beat it out of your brain when you're over 70. Let me tell you, it's really hard.
Yeah, I've been like really into Maria Montessori's teachings on parenting.
Yeah.
And she talks about that all the time, that like you're not supposed to say, wow, good job, because then the kid's constantly looking for validation from you. Like you just like kind of state like, oh, I see that you made that, or I see that you were able to tie your shoe. Remember how last week you weren't able to? And it's like you kind of try to train a kid to find satisfaction in their own abilities rather than like seeking outward of themselves. Because she was saying like a lot of depression and anxiety comes from that impetus to like get validation from the external. And what yoga teaches is that like the material external is constantly in flux. And it's the same thing that Ethan Hawke was saying, like the audience is fickle. It's, if we've learned anything, they just change their minds in a minute, and something they love 1 second, they're going to hate the next. So like, why are you putting any weight into that? It doesn't mean anything. Unless we make it mean something. And in that case, it'll make us suffer. He was talking about his children, watching his children play, and how they're like in this pure state of untainted creation, right? They're just like putting sticks together and making mud pies. And that's like, they don't care what the outcome is. They're just in their beingness. It's like a flow state that it's really a state of yoga, right? If you're really practicing pure creativity, you are entering a state of yoga.
Yeah.
So
And it is when you get there, when you get really involved in something and you're sinking into it, and you're not thinking about, for example, what the writing group is going to say about it 2 days hence, that kind of thing. If you're, it is a delightful, wonderful experience.
for sure.
Remember people were talking about 10,000 hours before you master something.
Mm-hmm.
I really think 80 or 8,000 of those hours is getting past the concern of doing it right, It's getting concern and just getting into doing it yourself. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What would you change? Try it again, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really think that's what takes the time. The technical stuff takes time to practice, of course, but it is the getting past all the layers of the stuff that we're supposed to do that takes the time.
Yeah, because I mean, we're often taught art in an institutionalized way where you're going to school and you have a class where you get grades, and it pollutes the experience. Like my mother's a fine artist. She does oil paintings, and graphic design, all that. So I grew up and we always had a studio in the house where there was just like a million paints to use and paintbrushes. And she always sort of directed us to just like express our emotions. Like there was never any criticism or direction or like, this is the technique to use. It was
Mhm.
very like pure creativity. And that was always like fun for us. And I loved art. So when I went to college, I minored in it, and that like destroyed me ever wanting to get a degree in art because oh my, there was like one class I took where the teacher took my paintbrush and painted on my canvas over what I did, and I was like, what the fuck? Like after that I just couldn't anymore. I mean, like when I studied it in Italy, because I was only there for 6 months, but like the teachers there did not do that. It was not like, it was never like, we didn't even sit and have critiques. It was just like the teacher would come around and like ask you what your feelings were on it. It was never that, but like the American version of it was like, how can you perfect it so you can monetize it? And that like just I couldn't do. I hated that. That destroyed it for me. So I wouldn't go and get like a master's in art after that. It's like, screw that. I'll just like, make it when I want to make it. And it kind of felt the same in like not all of my because I have a minor in English too, like literature. Like not all of the teachers were terrible, but some of them were. They were like trying to direct your creativity. And I don't know. I think it's okay if they direct like grammar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also uh, the the couple of writing classes I'm in, no one would dare change your phrasing. They might say, "What are
Mm-hmm.
you going for here?" And then say, "Look, I have a suggestion if you want to hear it that might make it more effective. You're going for this. You want it to make it more effective, and of course, you're in the class because you do want to learn something, right?"
Yeah.
And and if I say yes, then the teacher says, okay, so if you reverse these two sentences, look what happens. And then all of a sudden you see, oh yeah, then all of a sudden that paragraph has greater power, that kind of thing. That's good. But then you're in a setting where you're trying something and you're actually asking to learn a specific thing, and you're asking for help from a technician who's got the skill, and
Right.
they skill. I mean, that, to me, that kind of, it's almost like an independent study.
Mm-hmm.
Although one of the teachers, actually two of them, have recently started saying, I want to impart this to you. It's almost like this book we're reading, the HYP. It's almost like that. I want to tell you something, take it or leave it. You can find it useful or not, but it's not a specific criticism of anybody's work. It is, when you're using dialogue, sometimes this can happen. And sometimes if you do this, you add more narrative to the dialogue, it comes out clearer for the reader. And she'll give an example of her own stuff. I wrote it first like this, then I changed it. What do you guys see? That kind of thing. And to me, that kind of coaching is effective because it's take it or leave it,
Yeah.
and it's the technical sharing. So I mean, I needed a good watercolor course where there's that kind of technical sharing,
For
but anyway.
sure. Like, but there's not like the reliance on the external validation because that just destroys the creative impetus.
Yeah,
Right.
and that
It's like if you like my father, right? My father will come in sometimes. He's an amazing photographer, my father, actually. He's like got this secret artistic thing, but he would like come in the middle of us painting and he would start criticizing, and we just like banned him from the art studio. Like, you can't do that. It's not done. You're going to ruin the ending because you're like affecting the way that we're deciding to do it. And I think that that's what you're saying. Like, it's way different to have somebody like helping you develop technique than it is to have somebody criticizing you in any
yes,
capacity or validating you. Like, criticism and validation, they're both a big problem.
yeah. I mean, it's in one of my newer writing class. The first thing I presented to them, everyone loved, and actually that was quite destructive for me. They have everybody, oh, this is so good, it's perfect, it's blah blah, and That was not helpful to me at all, at all. If instead they had talked about how that particular piece had made them feel or something, that might have been helpful.
Yeah.
But it's destructive in a lot of ways. It like set me back 3 weeks, you know. It's because you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I'm all that, you know. I mean, that's part of it, and I could go on, but I'm sure you can follow through all the ramifications. And it's not just the yeah, I'm all that. It is part of, well, that worked and that pleased them, so I got to do that again, even though. And then when I tried to do something different, there was stunned silence because nobody knew what the F I was going for, you know. Clearly I needed to rewrite that, but it was like devastating, you know. It was like getting punched in the stomach. And I thought, oh, Susan, suck it up. You know, you're trying to do something, and if they don't get it, that's okay. You know, but you have to write so people get it. But you know what? It's okay that they don't get that right now. Read the next chapter, you know.
That's the idea of playing the fool. But like, I hear you, there are so many writers who have very like big books. Their first book is so celebrated, and then they like come down with writer's block, right? Because they're like, how am I ever gonna write something like that again? And it's
That's
kind of sad. It's like if nobody said anything, they could probably just keep producing very fluidly. It's
Yeah.
funny, huh? It's
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
how humans are.
That's something Alicia talked about in her book about how they call it sophomore slump.
Yep.
And she didn't speak about it regarding books, but more like soundtracks or not soundtracks, CDs, albums. But
Yeah.
because she said because of how the music industry is, that what happens is these artists don't use their voice and they create what is being told to create. And so then they get a little bit more freedom and so now they've built this fan base and their music, everyone loves their music, or this fan base loves their music, and now they have a little bit more freedom to create their own individual stuff. And it's different than the first album, and this is where the sophomore slump comes from, because now this fan base doesn't want to hear this music. They like what was already produced the first time. And where Alicia was saying is that she was true to herself and she spoke up for herself in that first album. So, and she was proud of herself for doing this. But I thought that was pretty interesting, but also really sad that these people have something to create and didn't know to like stand up for themselves.
Well, it's not just, I think the music industry doesn't let them stand up for themselves. You got to be really strong to move forward. And
they're so desperate for money that they like we just as Americans, we just get so greedy when money like that is in front of us, or they become the greed to become famous or whatever.
Well, capitalism pollutes creativity, absolutely.
Yes, I think so. I remember when Nora Jones' first album came out, and I remember listening to it and saying,
"Oh, she's not with me anymore."
That's
Sorry, go ahead.
When Nora Jones' her first album came out, maybe 20 years ago now. It was a while ago. I remember listening to it and thinking, that's too bad, because it was a fabulous album. Every song was just so captivating. And one of my friends, were listening to it. One of my friends said, that's it, Nora, you can go home now, no more. And I remember thinking, that's exactly right. And that's too bad, because she clearly, has amazing gifts and so on. And I thought, oh, number 2 is going to be so hard, But anyway.
Well, Alicia also, like in her book, she speaks about how she's so thankful that I can't remember which word she uses, God, universe, unicorn, whatever the higher spirit word she uses. She doesn't use universe, unicorn, clearly, but she's so grateful that this creative flow is flowing through her and allows her to put these words and music together. And there's another TED Talk by Elizabeth Gilbert that she speaks about this creative energy, and it ties to like what Ethan's saying and this idea of creativity. and how like these creative things flow through us, and sometimes like they go past us, and we like, when you got a really good thought and you're like, oh, I need to find a pen right now and write the thought
Right.
down, and you can't find a pen anywhere, and then now you can't remember it, or you can't like, and it's like float on to the next person, and like let the next person enjoy it, the next thing will come to you. And I've always like loved she describes it a little bit better, a lot better I should say, but I do like this whole idea of creativity. But we should move to breath if anyone wants to finish thoughts, and we can move to breath and meditation.
Okay.
Aw. My Kramer just woke up. He's giving me like, he's like falling asleep while I know she's not with you.
Aw.
He's falling asleep while he's standing up. He just woke up.
Look at him. He's cuddled up in his
Yeah.
dog bed and
He's
with
got
his
his
dog.
whole, yeah, I gave him my old bathrobe to cuddle in.
So cute. Show me him after meditation. I'll go get her.
I will. All right.
Thank you.
He was so funny last night. I mean, he doesn't take really long walks anymore, but I went for like a little walk at 9 o'clock, and I came home and I took him for a walk, and we were out for half an hour sprinting around the neighborhood. He was like a 3-year-old puppy.
Mhm.
I
Isn't
He
thought,
must
it?
feel better, huh?
what?
He must feel better.
Oh yeah, he's been feeling fine.
Yeah.
This dog's gonna live forever.
Good.
All right, let me first do breath. We'll do a few rounds of alternate nostril breathing, and then I'll set the timer.
What?
Okay. Taking a few breaths through the nose, staying nice and tall. Then bringing right hand over to your face, close right nostril with thumb, inhale through left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Taking a few more rounds on your own breath, adding your retention and locks in if it's in the practice. You'll take as many rounds as you need, ending on the left side, exhaling out through the left side. I'll set the timer for 20 minutes. You'll join us when you're ready. Bringing hands together in front of heart. Namaste.